Hi everyone. In this Sup with SAP video, we're going to discuss fulfillment with warehouse management. In the last video, we purchased things. Now we're going to sell some things from our San Diego warehouse. Let's go ahead and get started. Just like in our last video, when we talk about procurement and fulfillment with warehouse management, many of the transactions are similar to what we've seen in simpler settings like Miami or Dallas. So in this case, when we're selling something, the initial transactions are exactly the same as we've seen before. I'm going to start with VA01, which means I'm skipping the quotation step and I'm going straight to a sales order. For my initial entries, they're exactly the same as we've seen before, with one major difference, and that is that because we are going to be selling from San Diego, our sales organization is UW00, not UE00. I'm still choosing an order type OR. I'm still choosing a distribution channel, WH for warehouse, and in this case, I'm choosing division AS for accessories. For my sales order, I decided to sell to Rocky Mountain Bikes in Denver, Colorado. I entered a make-believe purchase order number. I always use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've decided that I'm going to sell 10 of my shirts. Since I know I purchased them for San Diego last video, I've got 10 shirts available for sale, and I'm going to go ahead and move them along to the Rocky Mountain customer. I'm going to go ahead and save my order, just like we would in any other fulfillment situation. The second step in fulfillment is exactly the same as we saw in other situations as well, except that we will not be able to complete this step in one setting. We're still going to go to VL01N to manage our outbound delivery. Our shipping point in this case is going to be San Diego. And normally what we would do here is we would go to the picking tab and we would enter a storage location, which in this case will be trade goods, and we would enter a picked quantity. But in San Diego, we cannot type something in the picked quantity field. If you try to type something, this will not work properly. San Diego has a warehouse management module installed, and therefore the picking is handled by that warehouse management module. We're not picking things manually. So you do not type something in the picked quantity field. Instead, what you do is click the green checkbox up top. That will fill in a 0, which is then grayed out for the picked quantity. We can't complete this process from this particular transaction without doing some other things first. We can't click on post goods issue because we don't have anything to send. We can't fill in the quantity for picked quantity manually because we have to get warehouse management involved. And there's some clues here that we need to do so when you look at overall WM status. Right now it says type A, which is warehouse management transfer order required. So we need to get warehouse management involved to get some inventory moved from our warehouse down to the loading dock so that we can ship it. So my option here is not to complete this outbound delivery, but instead to save it in an incomplete state. If you went to your document flow by either going back to VA03 or VL03N to view your previous two transactions, and then looking at the document flow for either of those, you would see that the standard order is currently complete and the outbound delivery is currently open. We did not finish VL01N yet. And we're going to keep coming back to this screen to see how things move forward as we get warehouse management involved. The next step is our first warehouse management transaction for fulfillment. And this is where we get warehouse management to get something out of our warehouse and send it down to the loading dock. This is a new transaction code and it is VL06P. This transaction is an outbound delivery for picking. We'll enter a shipping point, which is going to be our San Diego plant. Our picking date is fine, it's today. You can choose only warehouse management picking for picking data if you want, but for our purposes, it should not matter. And you can leave everything else on the screen and simply click the execute button. You should see a list of your outbound delivery documents that require picking. If you have more than one, that means you haven't followed up with this step in previous transactions, and you'll have to go ahead and resolve that. I only have one, which is my most recent outbound delivery. I'm going to check the box next to it, and I'm going to click on the TO in foreground button. Just like in the last video, it doesn't really look like a button until you hover over it. On this next screen, we don't change anything. We simply click the green checkbox. And then on the next screen, all that we do is click the Save button. That has created a transfer order for us, which you'll see in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. The bar where your outbound delivery was listed should turn green, which is another visual indication that you've successfully created a transfer order for this particular item for this outbound delivery. The next step is the second step for warehouse management. And if you'll recall from the last video, it's always the same second last step. It is LT12, which is to confirm our most recent transfer order. Here's our transfer order number. Mine's 7002. I'm going to go ahead and click the green checkbox. In this case, you can see that I'm getting things out of bin STBN-1-000. That's where my shirts currently reside. And I'm sending them to an outbound delivery area for an outbound storage bin that has the same number as my outbound delivery from VL01N. Always starts with an 8. And that makes sense. We're getting stuff out of our warehouse and sending it down to the loading dock. I'm going to go ahead and click Save, which confirms my transfer order, does not create a new document, just confirms that we actually did what we said we were going to do. At this point, if you went back to your environment document flow, you would see that outbound delivery is still being processed, but you would see an additional step, which is that the warehouse management transfer order has been completed. And had I gone and looked at this between VL06P and LT12, you would see that it was in process. But we've gone ahead and completed our transfer order. That means that the outbound delivery can now be completed. Let's go ahead and do that. Instead of using VL01N, we're going to use VL02N. Recall that 01 means we're creating something, 02 means we're changing something, and 03 means we're looking at something. In this case, we're changing our existing outbound delivery document. If you didn't have your outbound delivery document filled in for you automatically, you'd need to fill it in at this point. Then you can click on the green checkbox to see that the picked quantity has been updated from 0 to 10 in my case. And my overall warehouse management status has changed from A to C. Warehouse management transfer order is confirmed. Again, if we check this in between the creation of the transfer order and the confirmation of the transfer order, you'd see that the warehouse management status would be in limbo briefly, but we went ahead and took care of those two steps immediately, and so we're good to go. The last thing to do with the outbound delivery is not to save it, but to click on Post Goods Issue. That completes the outbound delivery. If you went back in and looked at your document flow, you would now see that the goods issue is complete. So you have actually sent these items to the customer. The remaining steps are the same as what we've seen in our previous example of fulfillment. So I still need to go ahead and invoice the customer, and I need to receive money from that customer. Those transactions are VF01 for creating our invoice, and then F-28 for collecting money from the customer. I'll go ahead and quickly complete those two transactions. After you have completed the invoice, VF01, and then created the accounting document, F-28, to collect money from your customer, you should see that everything is either completed or cleared in your document flow, which means you have finished this process. One thing I did not show during this process is what LX03 would look like while we were moving through the process. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what those transactions would have looked like during various stages of the process. So if at the beginning of the process we looked at MB52, we would have seen that we had 10 shirts in unrestricted. And if we looked in LX03 in this case, bin 1, we'd see that we'd have shirts in that bin, and we had 10 in total stock and 10 in available stock. After completing VA01, we would see the same thing. In MB52, we'd still have 10 shirts in unrestricted. And in LX03, we'd still have 10 shirts in total stock and available stock in our bin. And the same thing holds true after VL01N. We wouldn't see any change in our inventory in MB52, and we wouldn't see any change in LX03. After VL06P, we wouldn't see any changes in MB52. However, in LX03, we would finally see a change. Our total stock in our bin would be 10 shirts, but you can see that now we don't have any available because 10 of them have been designated as a pick quantity. So even though they're in there, they have been earmarked for a pick for an outbound delivery, and therefore they're not available. After LT12, where we confirm our transfer order, MB52 would still show 10 shirts in inventory. However, our bins would look vastly different. It turns out that STBN-1 my 3 digits is now empty. I don't have anything in there, including the shirts that were there before. So that's where the confirmation of the TO changes the bins quite dramatically. And after we go back and complete our outbound delivery with VL02N, we would finally see a change in MB52, where the shirts would actually have been issued and sent out to our customer and therefore are not in our inventory at all. You can see I have 0 inventory of shirts in San Diego according to MB52. So just like in our last video about procurement, you can see that warehouse management adds some additional steps to fulfillment in San Diego. Specifically, we can't complete our outbound delivery, VL01N, in a single step. We can't enter a picked quantity manually. Instead, we have to do 2 additional transactions, VL06P to pick things from our warehouse and send them down to the loading dock, and then LT12 to confirm that transfer order. Then we go back into our outbound delivery using VL02N and complete the process, post goods issue, and then we go ahead and invoice our customer and collect money from them. A few additional steps to allow us to be more precise about where we are putting things or getting things to and from our warehouse. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.